Plants grown indoors provide interest and natural beauty, and depending on the individual plants, they can generate a little light-weighted exercise in caring for them. Houseplants come in all shapes and sizes, from the dinky to the pretty flowering, from prehistoric shaped leaves to furry ones, and of course leaves in every shade of green and many coloured ones also. Some prefer sunnier spots, with others thriving in a darker nook. But all are cited as improving our mental well-being, regardless if we engage passively or actively with the plants. Houseplants are all plants that grow naturally outdoors somewhere in the world, often tropical or desert-like conditions where they are used to climates that here in Scotland we are almost alien to. But reading the plant label information or a little bit of Googling, a suitable spot in your home may be identified, and many of the plants available in garden centres and supermarkets will settle in fine into their new environment in your house. Each plant has its own particular needs. Remember, we are trying to mimic their natural growing conditions. Generally, the choice of houseplants available do well in a bright but indirect light, perhaps a few feet from an overly bright window or on an east or west facing sill. But remember, no houseplant will enjoy being homed right next to an open fire or radiator. Another general guide is to only water when the top 1 to 2 centimetres of the compost is dry. Poke your finger into the compost, and if your finger holds on to dark coloured, damp compost, leave watering for another few days, then retest. You're looking for your finger to hold on to next to no compost. Our centrally heated homes offer little atmospheric moisture for plants. A weekly misting with water would be a welcome treat, along with a monthly feed from spring through to autumn, the plant's natural growing season. With a little TLC, your new house plant will grow to the stage where you could make new plants from the original parent plant. This can be a simple yet satisfying tabletop activity, introducing a little light exercise and gathering the necessary kit together, bringing about a sense of purpose in creating new life and nurturing the new plants. Developing or maintaining motor skills in handling the plants, scissors and pots, and the sensory aspect of touching, smelling and seeing the intricacies of the plant's leaves and stems when taking the time to just do that very thing. And of course, whether participating as a group or as a one-to-one, the opportunity for meaningful conversation and reminiscence is huge. The following video clips demo how to propagate or make new plants from some popular houseplants. You might already have one of them. I'll start off with the Yucca plant. But first of all, I'm going to mix together some seedling compost and breaking up any lumpier bits and mixing with this white perlite, which helps with aeration and drainage, which is important for the young plant's development. Mixing a big tub of this compost could be a standalone job, and a tactile therapeutic one at that. Perhaps an individual could be set this task in advance of the session. Now let's look at the plant. Crinkly, strappy leaves, and this wee offset here. This wee offset here, if left alone, will grow into a bigger stem of leaves, but I'm going to take some secateurs or sharp scissors will work and make a clean cut close to the main stem. I'll peel off the lower leaves here, leaving only 3 or 4 on, leaving a clear stem that I can then insert into the compost. Where this wee stem was attached to the main plant, there are hormones which have the ability to convert into root-making material when in contact with moist compost and adequate heat and light. I'm using a tiny wee pot for this young plant cutting. It's better that it doesn't have too much compost holding on to too much water round about it. Its root system would develop happily in this smaller space. Give the pot a wee tap to knock out excess air. Gently push the stem in, then firm the compost securely around the cutting. Label with the date and plant name, and perhaps the client's name doing the task. Follow up with a good dousing of water, then set the pot on a little saucer and now water into the saucer from here on in. Place it on an east or west facing windowsill and check every few days for watering. Make sure it's not too wet, but don't let it dry out completely. And with the yucca, be patient. Yuccas are very slow to root. Here it is 7 months later, nice white roots showing. And here it is, the yucca, a full 10 months later, still in its original wee pot. New leaves have developed and it's looking great. The yucca is native to Mexico and the neighbouring southwestern American states. Has anyone ever seen one grown in its natural environment? Now for the peace lily. This plant is doing great, but has just about outgrown this pot size. I could pot it into a bigger pot, but I don't have the space for the bigger pot where I know it likes growing, so I'll divide this into several plants and give the spares away to friends. This plant grows as a clump. I'm going to divide it by gently tearing its roots apart. Sounds a bit harsh, but don't worry. Strong hands are required, or if hand-eye coordination and sound motor skills are available, a knife can be used to cut this root ball. There we go, wiggle them apart. And now potentially I have 4 plants. I'm using pots just big enough to comfortably hold the roots on the clump, and also using this compost that the plant was originally growing in. I will top it up though with the pre-mixed compost I used earlier with the yucca. Just checking it fits, yep. So this does fit in nicely. So I'm happy to continue packing and firming the new compost in and around this divided clump, making sure that the roots and stem are planted at the same depth as it was growing at previously. One done. As before, label and give a good dousing of water. Here are the 4 divided clumps all potted up. Peace lilies grow naturally in the tropical rainforests of Colombia and Venezuela, preferring to be in the shade and the warm, humid environment. I've got mine growing on a north-facing window in my kitchen beside the kettle. Many homes are home to a spider plant. Thriving on sporadic care, these plants quickly mature and start to produce babies, known as spiderettes, along spindly stems that come out from the mother plant. I'll take off these bigger spiderettes and these slightly smaller ones and these even more smaller ones. I'll leave them all to mature. I'm using sharp scissors and snipping the spiderette off from the stem that's attached to the mother plant. There's literally dozens on this plant. This bumpy node is where roots will develop from once planted in compost or inserted into a jar of water. Mixing up more compost here. Seedling compost and perlite as before, but I've also added in some drainage pea gravel too. 3 parts compost to 1 part each of perlite and gravel. Specialist pre-mixed houseplant compost is available to buy also. Spider plants are native to tropical and southern Africa, which experience very different climates from year-round tropical rain to periods of desert-like drought. This might explain why spider plants make such good doers in our homes. I'm using another wee pot here, just big enough to hold the spiderette, with about 2 centimetres compost all around it. I'm not taking the lower leaves off my spiderettes, as they always appear to root fine like this. Jiggle the compost level and use your finger to poke a hole and press the plant into the compost. Use a spoon if it's easier to top up the compost level all around the leaves. Teamwork here can have one hold the leaves out the way, with the other scooping in the compost. Firm the compost in well. One very laden mother spider plant could easily generate an afternoon's worth of baby planting. There we go. Remember to label as before and water. These spider plants will root round in a matter of weeks, but avoid a south-facing window until they're mature. For interest, you might like to watch spiderets develop their new roots. Take a jam jar and fill almost full with water. Using sellotape, make a crisscross pattern, leaving 4 gaps. As before, snip the spiderets off of the mother plant's spindly stems, ensuring you don't damage the nodes. Pop the spideret through a sellotape gap until the node is fully submerged in the water. The woven sellotape supports the spiderets to remain upright, and the clear glass enables root monitoring. Wandering dude is another good doer. Native to North and South America, it is adaptable to many climates. This mature mother plant has regular cuttings taken from it. A, to keep it in shape, and B, they are so easy to root and share with friends. Snip down a stem approximately 6 centimetres in between 2 sets of leaves. I'm using my usual mix of compost and the little pots again, and fill and level the compost as before. I'm removing the lower sets of leaves from my cut stems, leaving 4 leaves at the top, pressing the stem well into the compost. The part of the stem that the leaves have been removed from will start to develop roots in time. From the compost down well. Again, label and water well. Tradescantia, or wandering dude, cuttings root super quick, so it is important that they have an almost constant supply of water. I also put some cuttings into water. Here they are 2 weeks later with roots developing. A couple of the plants that I was using earlier on. This is one of the peace lilies. If you remember, I split my big chunky peace lily into 4, and this is one of them. And it hasn't been potted on anymore from the pot it was put into, but you can see that it's starting to root round really nicely. And I've got a second one. If you remember, I was just tearing it apart. Now this, I've got a little baby one here that is ready to be potted on. So I'll just quickly show that tearing apart isn't too bad. And what I will do after, I'm not going to do it just now because you've already seen me do it, but I'll pot this little one up into a small pot and I'll have another plant. I'll probably give that one away because I don't have so many windowsills that they would grow so well on. But just to show you how quickly these plants do get established. and grow. My yucca plant, where have I sat it? Here, it's here. I mentioned that it hadn't been potted on from this little pot, and this is it still in the exact same pot, but you can see even in the last 2 months since I took that last photograph how much growth it has put on. I'm just going to have a wee look at its roots, and yeah, you can see the roots developing round nicely, and perhaps this plant is getting to the stage that I should be potting it on to a bigger pot size also. What else did I show you? The spider plants that I had put into the water. That was just about 3 weeks ago, the 20th of December, I think I was doing that. And you can see the roots just starting to develop now, these little fine white ones. So that's it doing its own magic. It's working away. I'll wait till there's a bigger clutch of roots before I do anything else with it though, before I put it on anymore. And my tray of wandering dudes that I showed, I've lost count of how many times I've taken cuttings from these plants over the summertime. You can see where I have taken my scissors and I have taken a snip, and you can see where a new piece of growth has been stimulated from where I took the cutting from. Now those cuttings, there's 1, 2, 3, four I've taken from this plant over the summertime, and it's made all this new growth. And as I say, a wandering plant, a Tradescantia, if you can get your hands on one of them, you will be making plants to give away for the rest of your days. Now, this is another of the babies that you can see I've taken a cutting from there. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take any more cuttings from this one. I am just going to pot it on because its roots are now filling this little pot quite well, and I want this little plant to grow and bulk out into being a big fat one. So I've just popped it out of its pot, and I have my compost here. This is some compost that I was using earlier on for something else. It's just seedling compost again, mixed with some pea gravel. So I'll just put it in here. Some more seedling compost and some more of the perlite. I'll just roughly mix this together. As I said in the video, you can buy houseplant compost in relatively small bags in the garden centres. And some of the bigger supermarkets sell it as well. And if you're really keen to get right into your house plants, some of the more specialist garden centres actually sell compost specific to the type of plants. Jenny in her presentation was showing us lovely bonsai, a little bonsai tree. You can get compost specifically for potting on bonsai plants, compost specifically for cactus, and things like lemons and orchids and things like that. So if you're really interested, you can go and buy a specialist compost, but for what I'm doing here, I'm quite happy with my mix. So normally I wouldn't want to pot this small plant into such a big size up of pot, but because I know the Tradescantia grows so quickly, I'm going to be a bit bold and pot it into this slightly bigger pot, but I'm quite sure it'll be fine. So just tapping it in, sugaring it round about, and the roots all look nice and healthy to me. If they were really densely spiralling around, I would like peel them out to stop that spiraling effect, but the roots are quite happy to me, so I'm just going to wiggle it in, press it down a little bit so it's not proud of the lid of the container, the pot, and scooping with my hands because I always use my hands, but a small spoon is ideal for this job because you can use the spoon to tap the compost in and around, like so. Pressing it down firmly to knock out any excess air gaps that might be in there. And I'll stick my label back in it that I've already got here. And that's it. Actually already looks a bit healthier because it doesn't look quite so squashed into that little pot. I'll sit that on a tray and give it a good watering to get all the new compost quite damp, but being aware not to overwater it. When I was watching the video back, I realised that the sellotape that I was sticking over the jam jar wasn't so clear. So I've just stuck some masking tape over this jam jar with water in it, just to maybe make it a wee bit more clear what I was trying to demonstrate, that I've got these gaps in here. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to take this little Tradescantia and I'm just going to snip off, just to demonstrate again, peeling off the lower root, sorry, not the root, the lower leaf, leaving a couple at the top, and then I'll pop that in there and it will start to root round about there in time. A couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks maximum. And that's about all I want to show you, apart from one last plant. I remember doing a, Jenny, I can't remember which demo we did, but it was this wee calancho we were talking about.
Okay.
And this calancho I got about 2 years ago, and quite a few people were asking how did I manage to keep it alive, and I said I had no idea other than once it finished flowering, I put it in a dull window, really cut back its watering, and then when I saw new growth coming on, I pushed it into a brighter window and gave it lots more water. So here we are, almost coming up to 3 years, and I've got new flowers coming. And these little plants are really popular plants at Christmas time. Now, I got given this as a gift, and it was in a little sort of ceramic Santa Claus shaped pot. And I'm hopeful that some of you guys got given one as well. But people tend to, when they start to die off, they look a little bit ropey. But please don't break off all the dead flowers once they have died. Take it into a duller window, let it dry out a little bit, and then after a sort of couple of months rest, start giving it a little bit more water, and you'll see fresh growth coming on it, like this one here. And as soon as it starts to develop buds, push it into a brighter windowsill, start giving it some more water, perhaps top up the level of compost in the pot with some fresh compost so you can get some fresh nutrients, and you will have a lovely little plant reflowering for you. So there we go. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you so much. We'll just let Joan get back over to her desk, and we'll see her there. That's great. Let me just remove the spotlight from there and we'll get back to seeing everyone. There we go. I'm gonna see. There, we can all see each other now, I think, and Joan's coming back to her desk. That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much. Top tips on calanchos there. If you've got one for Christmas, you'll be able to maybe keep it a bit longer. And fantastic. That was great, Joan. Lots of opportunities to get your hands on the plant material, isn't it? I think for people, lots of opportunities. I love the tearing apart the peace lily. I mean, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? Just to get your hands on that and just get right into it. And I know when myself, when I've done some potting up with people, they really love mixing the compost together. I find that people are really attracted to that, and they love to get their hands in there and mix up the compost. So loads of opportunity for sensory immersion in all these activities. So that's brilliant. Thanks very much. We've had quite a few comments here. Stephen was mentioning when we were talking about glass houses, Victorian glass houses, that he, with the care home that he works with, they visit the Kibble Palace and the Winter Gardens at the People's Palace in Glasgow. So that's lovely if you can get out for a trip there. It's lovely, isn't it? Because you can be indoors, but you feel like you're outdoors because you're getting all these lovely plants, and you can walk through and get all that lovely smell. And I think they've got a cafe as well. So
yeah,
if you should be out and about with a group, it's a lovely thing to do. So thanks for that. I'm sure there's lots of places across the country. Actually, you could let us know where you go with your groups to find lovely indoor plant houses. That would be great. So Carolyn was asking a question. She asked, is there a right or a wrong time of the year to divide up your house plants and to do these kind of, taking cuttings and propagating them?
Okay, the right time to do it is when it suits you, when you have got the time and the inclination to do so, because if you feel like doing it, I would say have a shot at it. But ideally, it wants to be when the plant is sort of coming out of its new growth period, heading into a dormant period. So you're not upsetting its root system. Well, you are upsetting its root system, but you're not upsetting its natural growth pattern. But because indoor plants are being fooled into growing in artificial conditions, they don't really follow the natural life cycle that they would do in their natural environment. So I take cuttings all year round, if I'm perfectly honest. The Tradescantia in particular is a good example. I'm not joking when I say I was taking snippings every couple of weeks because it puts on so much growth. So I would say the right time to do it is when it suits you to do it. And as you saw with the peace lily, it actually had a couple of flowers on it. And some people would argue that you should do it then, and probably I would agree. I would have waited until it finished flowering, but I was in the zone, I was in the propagating mode, so I just went for it, and all 4 plants survived. So yeah, do it when it suits you, when you've got the plant and you've got the compost.
Terrific. Okay, so we can all get going then.
Yeah, absolutely.
No excuses. That's brilliant. Gail, who's joining us today from the USA, she's asking, what is the purpose of perlite?
Okay.
Why do we have that in the soil, in the compost?
Perlite was the white sort of broken granular polystyrene like stuff that I was mixing in, and perlite is dried, reconstituted volcanic rock. Basically, it's really it's very light, and what it does is inert. It doesn't do any harm to the plant whatsoever. It doesn't help the plant grow. It doesn't give it any nutrients or minerals or anything like that. What it does do is add aeration and drainage to the compost. It prevents the compost from clogging together. And if it's overwatered, the compost can clog together, and that means drainage. There's no suitable drainage channels and no natural air channels either. And roots, for good root development, you need good air and you need good drainage. So adding some perlite or pea gravel does the same job as well, but perlite is lighter to work with. Certainly helps root development by improving the drainage and aeration.
Terrific. Okay, now here's a question about indoor cyclamen. Lovely flowering plant, so that's going to bring your blood pressure right down. Where's the best place to site a cyclamen indoors? What's a good place to put them?
Cool room, definitely a cool room. They don't do in living rooms at all. If you're lucky enough to have, like a dining room that doesn't get used very often, so you've not got it nicely heated, that's the best place to have them. A hall is okay as well if it's not overly warm, but you've got to be careful of drafts. Cyclamen are a bit like poinsettias. They don't like drafts, and the leaf can drop if it's getting a cool draft the whole time. So a bright spot out of direct sunlight, but definitely in a room that's probably about 12 degrees. We all sit about 15 degrees minimum up to 23 degrees probably in a really hot living room, and they just, you know, you just see the poor wee cyclamen going like that, collapsing.
Okay, so a cool place for the cyclamen.
Yeah,
but
not a
but
bathroom,
not
and not drafty, not a bathroom, and not a kitchen, because there's too much condensation in there as well, and they don't like condensation.
Okay. Okay, so that's fine. Turn the central heating off.
Yeah. Put on a jumper.
Basically, yeah, lots of jumpers for that one. Lovely. Okay, now we've got a question here about what next? Oh, calanchos. You were talking about calanchos and trying to get them to reflower. So Margaret was asking, do you need cool short days to sort of get the calancho to get back into its flowering cycle? Is that what it's about? Would you reduce the amount of light it should have? You know, should you put it in a dark place?
I wouldn't put it into a dark place like a cupboard, like what you might do to force bulbs and things like that.
Right.
What I do is I move it from my bright side of the house to the dull side of the house.
Okay.
So mine has been sitting, it was probably about September, October. I moved mine over to the east facing window, and that's just sort of like, you know, over just in the run up to Christmas, I noticed it was putting on new growth, and that's little buds developing now. So probably in the next week or two, I'll move it back to my west facing window. It'll get much more light there. So I wouldn't suggest darkness or dark cupboards. I would just say less bright daylight. How about that?
A bit less, yeah. Okay, that's grand. And so then Barney's got a couple of questions on propagating the yucca, and he's asking, could you put the yucca in water instead of compost if you wanted to sort of see it grow? Is that possible?
Yep, I've seen that. I've not actually done it myself, but you can. I've seen other people doing it online and things like that. So yeah, definitely, if you fancy watching its roots develop. The only thing the reason I didn't do mine in the water was because they take so long to root, as you could see with my yucca. Honest to goodness, it sat there, you know. I forced myself not to check the roots because I knew there was nothing to look at, and I didn't want to damage anything that was sort of like trying to develop. My concern about leaving it in the water is you're going to have to refresh the water really regularly, or the water's going to stagnate and get smelly and horrible, and that's not nice conditions for the roots to develop in. So I chose to put it in compost because I reckon that was like the safer way of doing it, but you can. I've seen it done in water. Yeah. Okay,
that's fine. And then he had a question about compost, about the use of peat-free house plant compost. Is that what you use? Do you use peat-free, or what?
My mix of compost is I use, because I grow a lot of seedlings and things like that. I've got a big bag of seedling compost that I buy from the nursery, and seedling compost doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it, so it's good for growing on young baby plants like house plants also. But I just add in the extra perlite and pea gravel, so it's more suited to the natural environments that these house plants would grow in ordinarily.
Okay, and someone's asking, Carolyn's asking, do Christmas cactus, here's a question, do Christmas cactus prefer to reroot in water or soil? Well,
Carolyn, I'm going to have to show you something. One I have prepared earlier. This is a Christmas cactus. Now, this is a Christmas cactus. These are cuttings, by the way. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
And this is this one here is new growth that's coming out. Oh no, I've just broken one off of there. Oh, dreadful. Anyway, this is a Christmas cactus that my mum has had for absolutely donkeys. My granny grew this Christmas cactus, and it was starting to look a wee bit sad for itself. So mum asked me to take some cuttings of it to see if we could keep granny's Christmas cactus alive. Now, I put 10 in here. And what was the question? Water or soil?
Water or soil? What would be
You've really got to, you're breaking off imagine this was the proper cactus. You're breaking off a couple of the stems, a couple of the plates of leaves together, and you're leaving them to just air dry for a couple of days, and then sticking them in the compost to root round. I've never seen them rooting in water. I've never tried it and I've never seen it, so I can't comment on that. But I am really taken that mines have started to grow, other than the fact I've just damaged one of them myself, but that's my own fault. This one is coming away great. And I can tell that there is roots developing in below. By tugging on them, I know there's a bit of like hold in there. So definitely, and this mix I've got in here, there's loads of pea gravel in my seedling compost. So these cactus cuttings are in probably 50% pea gravel, drainage gravel, and 50% of the seedling compost. I'll report back in a year's time how these are doing.
That's cool. I know somebody, well, I've tried myself to root those, and I did it in a jam jar.
Okay.
I did it with soil, so if I could see if the roots were developing,
okay.
I sort of tucked it into the side of the jam jar. So that's another way if you want to kind of have a wee window into the roots, is try a jam jar.
Good.
There's a couple of people having to leave us, but they're saying that's been so interesting, and it's find it useful to spur me into my sessions with my clients. That's lovely. That's from Lucy and Michaela, and so interesting and inspiring, she's saying. That's terrific. Okay, do we have any more questions? Has anyone got any more questions they'd like to throw in here? I think I've managed to capture everything. Not everyone.
There's one on poinsettias. What conditions does a poinsettia like?
Oh, that's the one I missed.
Out of a draft, most definitely out of a draft.
Yeah.
They can take a warmer room than the cyclamen, but definitely out of drafts. Away from a door, away from a window, in the middle of the room, so it's not getting any of those drafts. The wee leaves just will drop off at the slightest sniff of wind.
Cool. That's lovely. I'm just checking that there's not more in the chat here. Lovely. Well, thank you all for all your questions. Oh, wait a minute. Whoa, a peace lily. This is Linda. Linda's asking about our peace lily. It was in flower when she got it, but it hasn't flowered again since. What am I doing wrong?
Maybe have a wee pull it out its pot and see if the root system is really quite congested, and if it is, just do what I've done, you know, like kind of identify where you could maybe split it into a couple of plants and repot those individual clumps up. And the fact is getting new nutrients out of that fresh compost might just, it's maybe just hungry and it's needing some feeding. And in the video I said, you know, like houseplants benefit from being fed in summertime during their natural growing period. So perhaps pot it on and give it a little bit of a feed come May, June time, and hopefully that'll help you.
That's terrific.